just take it blurry for a second, and blurry it is, and now you're back clear.
All right.
Welcome back to Wednesday.
Thank you. It's happy hump day, everyone.
Thanks for being here with me. Okay, so today we're going to talk about the management side of working from home. And as you and I talked about a little bit earlier, this has been thrust into corporate life now, when I believe, because I've been a part of it for 20 years, and you've heard this old story from me too many times, but I've been doing work from home strategies for more than 20 years. I've been a huge proponent of it since 1999, so 21 years. So I'm going to lead with a quick story and my philosophy and theory, and then you're going to chime in and tell me I'm either full of crap or you're going to support it, which I'm fine either way. You know that, right?
Yes.
So years ago at a startup, we had a bunch of money that came in, and we had a choice to make because we were outgrowing our office space. And so we were trying to figure out all those details. I had 30 plus people reporting to me, and I asked the team, would you like to all work from home? Half of which raised their hand and said, absolutely. The other half said, no way. So we came up with this makeshift. This is 21 years ago. And so again, it's not about, I clearly don't want to make this look like I'm so out there. I've just always liked my personal freedoms. Okay. So we created this great work environment where we had desks like the one I'm sitting at today that were wide open in environment. We had modulated offices, which are now all the common things that you find in WeWork and Regis, et cetera. And of those people that wanted to come in, we gave them some more private space because they wanted to be in an office. They felt they needed that. Maybe they had kids that drove them crazy. I know you're living through some of that yourself.
Yes.
Others totally appreciated being able to work from home because they wanted their life, right, ahead of what is now more common, right, living a certain lifestyle.
Right.
So the hard part then, as a manager of all that, was what environment do I create where I can create trust, right? And since most of us work in a service economy, and most of us are in a project management lifestyle right now, okay, even if you're a lawyer, I would argue you've got a case coming up. Right? Aside from, say, doctors and a few others where you're seeing people and there's hours and all those other kinds of things, by and large, what we do can be done at a computer anywhere. So now, how do you create trust that your employees are doing things? And that's the thrust of our topic today, because I know how I did it. I required my team to come in on once-a-week meetings. They all had to be in there so I could see their faces, interact with them. Mm-hmm. They had status updates that they had to hit at certain times, and I made sure that they were ahead of any schedule I had. For example, if I needed something by Monday, I wanted something from them by the Friday before, so I had time to review it. So to me, it all boils down to trust, because I used to say to employees, and I still say it to this day, I don't give a shit how you do it. I don't give a shit when you do it, as long as it gets done and it gets done really well. Mm-hmm. So case in point, yesterday was up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I worked until 2 o'clock, had a gap. I went for a 2-hour bike ride. Came back home at 4 o'clock, finished up a bunch of work I had to do because I like that lifestyle.
Right.
So I have to trust that my employees are doing their job. And to me, that comes from their output. Mm-hmm. Are they showing up on time to meetings when we have them? And am I seeing work product that makes sense?
Yeah.
So I know we simplified it way too much here. You tell me now, after 3 minutes in, your thoughts.
So hearing you talk through that actually brings up something that I discovered through teaching children. There's a lot of books out there that support how poorly our education system is situated to bring out the best in kids. It's a very, very narrow scope, right? We teach English, math, science, history. Arts programs have been cut out largely. We don't teach home economics or teach kids how to do taxes or teach them how to have technical skills very often anymore. And what it's done is basically made a very narrow window for a select few children to succeed. And that becomes a cyclical product in and of itself, because these kids think they're bad at school because they're not succeeding in this very narrow scope of subjects. They think they're dumb, right? There's the pressure to perform in an environment where they're not best suited and fit in somebody else's mold. And it all really creates this story within themselves and around them of, you're not that capable, you're not that smart, you're mediocre, you're average, right? And in reality, the way that I approach talent is a very similar way. We all have a lot of unique and natural strengths. And we know this from a professional standpoint. When you use those strengths, you're much more powerful, you're much more engaged, you're much more productive. And putting that person in the right job role to leverage those strengths, putting them in the right culture where their values and their output match is the same. It's all the same concept as allowing people to work in the way they work best. Yet we still try, and we've had all this research for years, so it doesn't surprise me that 20 years ago you did this, but we still try to fit people into this prescribed mold that
Mm-hmm.
we see as success. And that is the 9 to 5 office job, right? And so if you can't perform well in that, then you're not a good performer. And in reality, there's always going to be the people that take advantage, right? There's always going to be people that push the boundaries, push the envelope, try to get more for less work. But you have to be able to identify those people quickly and manage them out and not punish the many for the few.
People do that today in a work environment in an office,
Oh, of course. On
right? I mean,
Facebook or on
I've
Netflix
worked with people
or,
who don't go to meetings or show up unprepared.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I'm with you. So go ahead,
In
sorry.
fact, you're creating more. It's scary to trust, right? It's scary to put it back on somebody in case they fail or they don't deliver and you get held accountable. But the reality is you're creating more work for yourself by having to micromanage someone or in the office trying to put in programs that track when somebody's online leveraging, sites they shouldn't be on and wasting work time versus focusing on what they need to get done. And your point really is it's the product that matters. If somebody is getting it done and getting it done well, why do we care how it happened? If they're not, like cutting down people in the process and, murdering babies on the side of the street to do
Of
it, right? Like if
course.
they're not like
Right.
breaking ethics, then yes, if they're getting it done in the way that they work best and they're getting it done well, it's a win-win for everybody.
This is a corny ass analogy, and it's just what popped into my head. Sports, in some ways, is a useful analogy for me right now. There's a player named Michael Cooper who years ago used to play for Los Angeles Lakers when they were winning all of their championships in the '80s with Magic Johnson. He had one of the ugliest looking jump shots ever. If you look at the way a jump shot should look from the form and function, his was abysmal. And yet he didn't miss. Shot 49% from the field or some ungodly percentage, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, to your point, he wasn't shooting people to get that field goal percentage, and his shot looked awkward, but it went in.
Yeah.
And so we can look at, again, I just believe we're in such a service economy now that with defined deliverables and results and expectations and executables, that we can look at that and say, am I getting good work or not good work from you? And
Hmm.
to me, I've never understood see what you have to embrace is, and this is where I think I'm sometimes messed up. Like I think I'm crazy radical for some things. I don't believe in the concept of time of a clock. And so if it's 5 o'clock in the morning that I get up and an idea comes to my head and I start cranking through, great. If I
Yeah.
lose productivity at 1 o'clock in the afternoon because my body clock just shuts down, why am I setting up meetings at 2 in the afternoon when I'm going to be lethargic?
Right. And you're not
And that's a physiology of it, right? And so the question is, am I delivering goods,
right.
right?
And now more than ever, we have the ability to track those things and track them from afar. Right? There's so much technology. There's so many like Microsoft Teams or Slack or all these different programs, things that you can use to implement tracking. Right? Hey, update these goals throughout your day or your week to make sure that people are delivering on those small goals without you having to micromanage, and make sure that they're producing, right?
Yeah,
Without you having to physically stand over their shoulder or see them
right.
in the office, know that they're delivering on what you've asked of them. So, with that, I want to bring up the next point of addressing where's this going to go? Because we're amidst this change of forced work from home. And we've transitioned from about 4% of the workforce who's been working from home to now over 50% of the workforce who's working from home. And it's been this enormous, massive, sudden shift, whereas companies are just starting to really get comfortable with this concept. So, what do you do when you have this forced work from home and eventually it's going to be let up, but there's this new normal, right? Because let's be realistic here, we're not going to go back to the way things were. We will all change throughout this process. Our economy will change, our country will change, our values will change. Everything's going to change throughout this process. So where do we go from there? And we have to start looking at, as organizations and as leaders, how do we manage that change of people who want to stay working from home and leaders or businesses that want to bring them all back in to the way things were. And the best thing I can say for that is start using this as a free trial run, right? You're not promising anything. It's federally mandated. So whereas if this didn't happen and you wanted to test out a work from home, you'd be putting your neck on the line a little bit because you'd be getting people's hopes up and excited that maybe this will work, maybe it wouldn't. And if it doesn't, you have to deal with that. But right now it's mandated. So we can use this as a trial run and try and pull together some tips and tools and strategies to help us manage it effectively and see, who can work really well this way, who maybe can't and needs more of that in-office setting. What's the balance in between? How do we navigate that? And how do we make it work for both the employee and the business and find where on that scale it is? It doesn't necessarily mean that everybody in every business unit is working from home full time, right? It could be twice a month. It could be once or twice a week. It could vary among your team. So we have to start using this time as an opportunity to explore that because the reality is it's going to change for us eventually, and people are going to want that freedom. They've had the taste of it, they're going to want it.
I love exactly what you said, and let me expound on it just a little bit. Of the people that I work with in my formal job outside of this great life, there's probably 15 people that I've talked to on a daily basis who are who are working from home or close contacts of mine there. I'd say about five are struggling with working from home
Mm-hmm.
for a variety of reasons, and it's all stages of life. So it's people who have kids that are all moved out of the house now. It's people who have little ones at home, and so all the reasons for their discomfort falls back into their own way of liking to do work, which is going someplace. For
Mm-hmm.
them, they enjoy the process of being in a car. It's a routine that they are missing out on, right? Getting in
Yes.
the car, listening to their podcasts, getting to the office, setting up shop, having their silence, their environment, getting in the car and dissecting their day and chilling out, then getting home and starting that life. They like that separation. Okay.
Yeah.
And there are others now that I'm talking to who have found a way to create routine at home. All right. Who's right?
They're both right. They're both
Exactly.
right, right? It depends
Right.
on how they work best.
Right.
And
And
that's
isn't
where
that
you find a
ultimately
balance.
right? Isn't that ultimately what we want as managers? If I know five of my people are kicking ass by going to an office, I'm going to try to find a we work type environment for them. And if 10 are happier of the 15 working from home, and I
Yes.
see productivity going up, aren't I silly as an organization to force one or the other?
Yes. Yes, you are, and the fact of the matter is there's tools and resources regardless. And it's an adjustment for most people regardless. And I talked about this last week, right? Like I loved working from home. I do great remotely and having flexibility in my schedule. It works for me. It works for my lifestyle, my energy, but it was still an adjustment for me as a largely extroverted person. It was an adjustment for me to lose that interaction every week. And so I learned a lot about myself, right? I learned that probably the sweet spot for me is 2 to 3 days a week. And then maybe it's going into an office and meeting with my team and having collaboration. But in my business that I have now, running my own company, I don't have that option yet. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to find things to make it work for me. And we also talked about that last week. Like, how do you create that structure for yourself in your day? How do you create modes of communication and collaboration like you and I working on this project where we get to see each other and we get to like
Mhm.
mind meld and share
Mhm.
and talk and like those are things that give me energy that I would also have in the office, and I'm able to create those for myself at home. So it's not an all or nothing regardless. Like there's people that are more naturally drawn to one and more naturally drawn to the other, but you can make it work and make it be successful if you have the right tools and you have the right support system.
So let's tie this up then from a management perspective. We've talked a lot about different dynamics here. We've drifted a little bit away from purely management advice, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I do think it's all tied together because even managers in these environments are working from home too.
Yeah.
So they're balancing their own time and then trying to balance and manage the others. And I think you would agree with me in saying that if we were to sum it up in one word, it's trust, right? How do you create that environment of trust? What other things do you think we can wrap up here with? Like, what would be a way to help managers understand? You mentioned tools like Slack, which I use all the time with my teams. Kind of round this out for me from a manager perspective, because maybe we'll have a round two next week
Yeah,
on
I think we'll
management and
have
dive into more
to.
details. Yeah.
Yeah, because I have some like tangible things for
Yeah,
like
I know we haven't had a chance
practice.
to dive into that. Yeah.
But, trust is one, communication is another. Right? When you have natural, organic, built-in communication when you're around people throughout the day. And you're probably noticing that if you have partners that are working from home with you. I have heard a lot of people value the way I do, being able to like see my husband at lunchtime and share 5 minutes of connection while we're fixing each other lunch and going back to our desk. Right. So you have more built-in opportunities for communication when you're with someone physically in space than you do when you're remote. So you have to be very intentional both as a manager and as an employee in creating more modes of communication, setting expectations around what that communication should look like, setting up tools. Maybe it's training around communication, to refresh people's memory on how to keep that top of mind. But that's a really big one too. And I would say, when in doubt, overly communicate because you really
Yes.
are just missing out on those natural occurrences.
Awesome. So let's do this. Let's have a part two for next week.
Great.
And we'll dive into those details that I know you've got there because I know you and you're a preparer and you've got notes. I appreciate that you allowed this to be a little more free form today.
Yeah.
I think I was more in the mood for it anyway, so I
Uh,
apologize if I distanced us a little bit.
no,
So
I like on the fly.
okay, so next week we'll dive into the specifics of what management can do from tools to communication, etc. Your list. In the interim, I'm going to post this. What time is it? It's 1 o'clock Central. I'm going to try to post this within the next hour or two. So I'm going to make sure we're all edited and clean and good to go. Add any comments you want to in the group because you know you're in there. And then
Yeah.
I'll just label it part one because I want to keep this to a reasonable amount of time. We're at 18 minutes right now, and I know you've got stuff to do this afternoon as well.
My computer's
So,
actually dying, like right on cue. I don't know where the
okay,
battery. I
so
had like half a battery when we started this. It's just like
that's just
completely.
gone. No
Yeah.
worries. Okay, so thank you very much. Um, we'll do part two next week
Awesome.
on management and working from
Yeah.
home. Okay,
Great.
so
Peace. And I'm gonna get it eventually.
get it all the time. You're the best.
I
Thank
almost gave you
you.
the middle finger.
I would have earned it for sure.
Yeah.